All right, so I'm going to tell you about the 3 weeks that I lost. Not lost like I was sick or on vacation or doing something delicious. Absolutely not. Lost as in I handed those weeks over to a conversation that hadn't happened yet. I was in the shower writing scripts. I was in the car having full arguments with myself. I was lying in bed at 2 a.m., rehearsing my tone, my phrasing, my backup points in case the first ones didn't land. Rehearsing with my man and asking for feedback. I mean, 3-ish weeks. And then the conversation did actually happen. And it was oddly fine, better than fine. And then I sat there afterward thinking, why was I bugging? We're going to go in that direction today. I am Vicky. I coach late diagnosed ADHD women through the messy middle of transformation. And just like that, we are in month 4 of 6, which means we're in the excavation phase. If you're new, quick context, we've spent the last 3 months building foundations, awareness, belief systems, how your brain constructs stories and then moves them into beautifully furnished apartments. This month, we're going underneath the patterns. We're looking at the machinery. And no better place to start than rumination, because if you are adventuring with an ADHD brain, rumination is probably the machinery that runs the most and gets talked about the least, let's be honest. We talk about distractibility, we talk about executive function, we talk about time blindness, but the thing where your brain locks onto a problem, a conversation, a scenario, and just chews on it like a dog with a bone for days, weeks, dare I say months, I think that doesn't get enough airtime. And it must. And so that is where we will go. LOL. Because it's expensive in time, in precious energy, in your ability to be present to the actual life happening around you while your brain is 3 weeks ahead or further, rehearsing something that might not even happen or definitely go the way you think. The true definition of anxiety, if you will. So today I'll get into a real story about a friendship that was shifting, a conversation I was dreading, and the 3-ish weeks I spent preparing for an outcome that never showed up. Yay! Actually, I'm hot. So here's the old tea. I had a friendship that was changing. We were both touching the ripened age of 30. The shift wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big betrayal or blowout. It was just shifting the way friendships sometimes do. Different life stages, different priorities, the kind of thing that probably just needed a conversation, an honest, slightly uncomfortable, totally survivable conversation. But my brain did not receive it in this logical way. My brain received it as a 5 fire alarm that required immediate and constant strategic planning, of course. The best part about rumination with a heaping side of ADHD is that it doesn't feel like anxiety. It feels like productivity, our favorite. I wasn't sitting there thinking, I'm spiraling. My man wasn't really even noticing either. I am really good at masking, let's be honest. I was thinking, I'm being responsible. I am preparing. I'm thinking through all the angles. So that I'm not caught off guard. So she has all the objective reasonings as to why this is happening. LOL at my little mic thing. I wanted to leave nothing to confusion. I wanted to have a compassionate tone, yet be firmly boundaried. And maybe also still leave the door ajar for trying again. All this analysis felt like the most useful thing I could be doing, which is exactly why it's so hard to interrupt. Why would I interrupt something that feels useful? So for weeks, this is what my days looked like. Wake up, and within 90 seconds, the conversation was already playing on a loop. Before coffee, before my feet hit the floor, my brain was already loading the file and had pressed play. And I'd run through it, what I'd say, what she'd say, how I'd respond to that, how I'd stay calm, how she'd respond if she got defensive, how I'd respond if she'd cry, how I'd respond if she just went cold and quiet, which honestly was the scariest. What if she bashed me passive aggressively on social media, but people knew it was me? What if she showed up at my house unexpectedly? What if she blamed me for all of her life woes? What if it was actually me, my fault? So I mentally rehearsed in the shower. I rehearsed while making dinner. I rehearsed while my man was talking to me about something else. And I'm nodding, saying, yeah. Internally, I'm not there. Let's be real. I'm on round 47 of this repeated conversation I'm having with myself. And the cost of rumination is not necessarily what it does to you, it is what it takes from you and the people around you, right? I'm physically in the kitchen and mentally in a conflict that didn't exist yet. My man got a shell of me for weeks, but didn't really know it. I'm sure he felt it. But what I figured out later, and I mean significantly later, because insight in the moment is not rumination's strong suit. Let's be 100 about that. I wasn't preparing for the conversation. I was trying to control the outcome. Preparation says, let me think about what I want to communicate and how I want to show up. Maybe that takes an afternoon or less, maybe a journaling session, maybe one conversation with a friend or a therapist to get the thoughts organized. That's prep. That has a beginning and an end. What I was doing had no end because what I was really trying to do was guarantee that this person would respond the way I needed them to respond. I was trying to engineer a result. And with so much chagrin, I must admit that this is impossible. I cannot rehearse another human being into behaving the way I want them to. But my brain was completely and absolutely convinced that if I just thought about it long enough, I could find the exact combination of words that would unlock the response I wanted. And I could therefore curate the most best lemonade from these life lemons. But underneath that control is fear. Straight up. I was afraid of losing the friendship. I was afraid of being rejected. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing and having it be my fault. And instead of just sitting with the fear, which would have been deeply uncomfortable, but probably would have taken no more than 20 minutes, I converted it into a problem to be solved because problem solving feels better than feeling, especially for the ADHD brain. We love a problem. Give us something to figure out, and we'll go all day. The issue is that this wasn't actually a problem. It was an emotion, and emotions don't get solved, they get felt. But feeling them would require me to stop, sit still, let something uncomfortable move through, and my brain would rather rehearse the same conversation 200 times than sit for 20 minutes. And that, from my perspective, is the trap. Rumination disguises avoidance as diligence. It tells us we're working on something when we're actually sprinting from that something. So, after several weeks of this, the conversation finally happened. In my head, this conversation went 100 different ways. Most of them were some shade of terrible. She'd be cold. She'd be accusatory. She'd tell me I was being dramatic. She'd pull away. She'd say something that confirmed every insecure thought I'd been feeding for nearly a month. What actually happened was I sent a voice note, because I was scared to do this in person, to which she replied with some surprise, but no denial. After about a day, she requested that the friendship was too important and can we please meet up to discuss? So we sat down. I expanded on the thing I'd been afraid to say. And she said, yeah, I can see that. That's not how I want to show up in this friendship. That was it. We were on the same page. We both noticed the shift. We both cared enough to be honest about it. The conversation lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes before we got back to laughing. Wasn't heated, wasn't dramatic. It was two adults being imperfect, messy, but real as fuck. I remember sitting in my car afterward feeling this mix of relief but fury at myself because all them weeks, I gave 3 weeks to that. I lost sleep. I was distracted at work. I was half present with my man. I missed a deadline. I skipped workouts. I was ready to end the friendship. I mean, I ended the friendship, I thought, in my message. all to essentially prepare for a conversation that required almost nothing from me except momentary discomfort, honesty, and a little eye contact. And I'm sure you'll relate to this. None of my rehearsal was usable. Not one script, not one prepared response, because the conversation didn't follow any of the paths I'd mapped out. Big shocker. It went in a direction I hadn't even considered, which was the direction where everything was basically fine. My brain generated like 40 possible outcomes, and it goes well was not in the top 10. My brain, in 3 weeks of constant processing, never once generated the outcome that actually happened because rumination does not explore possibilities, it rehearses threats. And the cost are many. Here are a few. I mean, I think we talk about overthinking like it's just a personality quirk, like it's cute, like it's something to put on a mug. Overthinker with a little brain emoji. I get it. Humor is a coping mechanism. It's my favorite. But those 3 weeks cost me, and becoming aware of that is important. 3 weeks of fragmented sleep, not no sleep, going to sleep and waking up at 3, where my brain was immediately back on. And it felt like I was going to the bookmarked page that said imminent threat, and I had to get it together. I estimate I lost like 2 hours of quality sleep a night for roughly 3 weeks. So, what is that? 42 hours of sleep debt? 3 weeks of diminished focus at work, not inability to work. I showed up, I did the things, but maybe more 60% capacity because the rest of my capacity was being used for that imminent threat conversation tab, which was making my operating system run slow and tiredly. 3 weeks of truncated presence with my man in my relationship. My husband got my body in the room, but my mind was elsewhere. And he's patient and he's kind, so there was no calling out of any kind, which makes it worse because I got away with it. Nobody held me accountable for being gone because it looked like I was there. And I guess that was enough, which kind of sucks in retrospect. Of course, the workouts. I am someone who moves their body to regulate. It's one of my main tools in my toolkit. I skipped so many sessions because I was so mentally exhausted from the constant loop. I physically didn't have it in me. Rumination had me so tired from thinking that I couldn't do the thing that would actually have helped me stop thinking. Emotion, energy in motion, get in motion. That's the cost. It's not abstract. It's hours and days and missed connections and a body that didn't get what it needed because my brain was too busy solving a problem that wasn't. Why do we do this? If it costs this much, why does the brain keep running the loop? Well, safety is, of course, there. That's really the whole answer, because it feels safe. Our brain has a threat detection system, and when something feels emotionally risky, the brain goes into planning mode. It starts modeling scenarios, it looks for threats, it builds contingency plans, and every time it completes a cycle of here's what could go wrong and here's what I do about it, there's a tiny hit of a dopamine drizzle of relief. Like, okay, I have a plan for that one. That feels like safety. It's not safety. I'm sorry to tell you. It's the sensation of safety without any substance. Because if you haven't actually reduced the threat, the conversation is still going to happen. The other person's still going to respond however they respond because free will. Nothing in the external world has changed with all your thinking. You've just tricked your nervous system into a moment of calm by giving it a plan it can never actually execute because the scenario it planned for isn't real and we don't know how it will play out. Then the calm wears off and the brain goes, wait, what about this version? And the loop starts again. It's a vending machine that takes your quarter and gives you a brief feeling of control, keeps your change, and has you continuing to come back because the brief feeling of control felt so good. Yet you're always leaving with less than what you came in with. For ADHD brains specifically, this loop is extra sticky because we have a lower baseline of dopamine. problem solving produces dopamine. So, rumination can essentially be your brain self medicating with fake productivity. It's generating dopamine by solving scenarios that don't exist. And it works just as well because it keeps us coming back for more. So, if your brain is currently chewing on something, a conversation, a decision, a thing someone said, something you're afraid might happen, I would prefer you ask yourself one question. Not, how do I stop thinking about this? Because let's face it, that'll never work. But rather, what am I trying to avoid feeling right now? Because 9 times out of 10, the loop isn't about the thing, it's about the feeling underneath the thing. So for me, it was a feeling, it was a fear of rejection, of loss, of my seemingly endless fear of remembering things incorrectly and being called out on them. And I could have sat with that for 20 minutes and been deeply uncomfortable and then moved on. Instead, I spent 3 weeks building an emotional bomb shelter for a storm that was a light drizzle. The only storm was the one I created in my own head. Your brain's going to tell you that the thinking is protective, that if you stop, you'll be caught off guard, that you need to keep going. And I want you to know that your brain is not lying because it's malicious, it's lying because it's scared, and scared brains go on loops. That's just what they do. You don't have to stay in the loop just because it feels productive. You can step out. You can feel the thing. And you can discover, like I did, that the real conversation is almost never as bad as the one you've been having with yourself. So, next week we'll go into the mechanics of it all, how to spot it, interrupt it, redirect it, and so on. I would love to hear from you. Did this land? Have you had an experience like this in your life? What more do you want to hear around this? And also a review if you're listening on a podcast. That would be great for this to reach more people. A subscribe if you're on YouTube. You can comment on my curly cut, which I'm playing around with because it's brand new and I got this haircut yesterday and it feels great. Day one hair, fabulous. Okay, anyway, that's enough of that. That's all I got, my friends. So I will catch you next week.